Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Hawkeye Firefly Whoop split camera. This is a camera that not only does our FPV, but as well does our HD recording right here on a micro SD card. It also has a microphone. Out of the box it weighs 7.5 grams. It does come with a control board. It comes with this mount. You see those four holes. Those mount up to the back of the camera, as you can probably see there, as well as the screws. And the mount does have a hole in the side for mounting as well. A little tiny manual. And it comes in the case with some stickers that I can't read. Okay, we have a host of stuff to look at. First is going to be the HD light test, and I kind of contemplate whether I should even do these sorts of things because we don't look at it through HD, but we will have the analog side as well. So for those that might be unclear a little bit about this, this is actually what you record, not what you see. So don't mistake this for some other sort of camera where you see this sort of image quality in the goggles. You do not. That's coming up a little bit later in the video. We're also going to do a comparison between this and the Caddx Baby Turtle. And then we're going to look at the settings. And of course, we're going to fly it. Now, they list this as having a 37 millisecond latency. And when I flew it, I'll just get right to the point. When I flew it, I could definitely feel the latency. Yeah, you could do a latency test. For me, I wanted to fly it. Because if I can fly it, then maybe it's usable. But, you know, I wouldn't fly it. That's the genesis of this. I wouldn't fly this, not on a quad. Maybe if you're outside and you're just kind of cruising, or maybe if you're doing some sort of fixed wing sort of flight, maybe you have some sort of installation where you're looking for this because, you know, the price point, I do believe, is less than most of the others at only $37.99. There's a host of modes and features that they have in this recording, and every time I switched modes, I had all sorts of analog syncing problems with multiple VTXs. I'm not sure how viable that is. I really don't think the different modes, as far as I think it's FHD as well as HD. The FHD looks like a pinhole camera, like at a motel, a security camera. And I know as I'm walking around here, this isn't steady, but I do get to moments where I try to hold it steady so you can diagnose the image quality. We're also going to walk it around inside here after I get done outside here a little bit. But for me, you know, I've flown DJI in the house, and DJI has a latency that can sometimes get into the high 20s, and I can manage that just fine flying like I want. But at this latency, whether it's 37 milliseconds or not, I have to fly differently, and I'm not very comfortable, and you'll see that. Or you can just jump forward in the video as well to see that flight, because I think that's probably the most compelling thing for the people who visit this channel is that latency. So that's something that I think they need to correct. Probably requires different chips or hardware on the board in order to be able to output that, as we need to be able to fly, you know, like I like to fly. I like to fly a little quicker, and I thought the test inside was a better test for flight, mainly due to the fact that, you know, you have to be a little bit more precise and a little bit more on, and latency throws all those things off. So that's the genesis of this video. If you're here about doing it for quads and you're planning to fly, you know, even semi-aggressively or inside, that's probably what you need to know, and you probably don't need to watch the rest of the video. But it's all going to be here for those who may be looking for different use cases, or they just want to see everything. I don't know. I may have gone overboard with this, actually. I may have got way too much footage and done way too much for most people as far as a review goes. But yes, in review standards, isn't more supposed to be better? I hope that's the case, but I won't feel bad if you don't watch much further either. All right, now we're finally into the comparison between the Caddx Baby Turtle and the Hawkeye Split Cam, and there is a definite color difference in this HD footage. Again, this is not the footage that you see in the goggles yet. We haven't gotten there yet. There's also a field of view difference as well, and I think that makes, especially flying in tight spaces, like I said, indoors, that field of view is pretty important. At least it is to me. The more I can see, the more comfortable I feel. I think that the sky in the Hawkeye looks a little bit more natural. It looks a little bit more over blue in the Caddx. And I think the color on the house, the garage doors, the white, the kind of gray, tan taupe sort of color looks a little bit more true. But I also kind of feel like it's a little bit more sharp or clear in the Caddx Baby Turtle as well. But maybe that's just a settings difference that we can overcome or tweak to our heart's desire. You might be wondering why I pan around like this. In some cases, it allows you to see into shadows. It allows you to see at distance. It allows you to see, anything that's in the image as we kind of pan around the neighborhood. I think that's relatively important. Maybe more so for those people with those extra sharp eyes and have something specific that they're looking for in their cameras. And we look into the garage as well. That's more of a test for if you happen to be out flying through a barn or any other sort of structure that goes from natural light to shadows or dark. Okay, we looked at the flowers. We looked at everything else outside. Pan around. Let's take a look inside here at our comparison. Many of you have probably seen the inside of the house before. I tend to fly a lot as we see the our what is that? Our iRobot. It's one of those vacuuming robots. I got that for Christmas a couple of years ago. It's actually pretty nice to tidy up. We have 3 kids in the house, so a lot of little bits get left all over the place, or shoes drag stuff in. And our robot is named after the Office character by the name of Meredith. So whenever we talk about Meredith in the house, we are referring to our iRobot vacuum. We did find that we can't really run it at night because it bangs into everything and it bothers my wife in her sleep. So we run it during the day, generally when no one's around. But of course, I've been working from home for quite some time, and so I hear Meredith banging around while I'm working. It's kind of comical because sometimes I'll think someone's in the house, but it's just Meredith banging into everything as she's making her rounds. I always thought those vacuums would be much more precise and would map out kind of where everything is, but I really don't feel like it does, because it does. I've seen it, I've watched it bang into the same thing, repeatedly day after day after day, and so I don't think they're nearly as smart as I had assumed they are. But we've gone through the house. You got to see the inside, upstairs, downstairs, and now we're into the analog footage. This is the footage that you actually see in your goggles. Of course, this isn't recorded on my goggles. This is recorded on a Runcam DVR. I've got 2 of them identically set up, and they are connected to a flight controller. There's something about the white balance. If you don't have it connected to a flight controller, Gal Kremer had enlightened me to that fact. So I do have on my board that I mount these things to, I do have the Runcam DVR, which is the image that we're seeing on screen, as well as the cameras itself, 2 VTXs, and 2 flight controllers. They're actually really old flight controllers. I think they're F2s, but they serve their purpose. Also, you can see that the Caddx has a much different sort of recording notification. On the Hawkeye, we see where it says HD, and then it has the blinking red dot, versus the Caddx has the letters REC in white in the square, as well as the red runtime up in the top right-hand corner. And then we have the Caddx OSD stuff down there, and you can see I'm connected to 12 volts. I have a single PDB powering both of these particular quads. So that's my setup, and that's how I do these things. I know it shakes around a little bit. It'd be awesome to have some sort of handheld gimbal that would smooth this thing out, but I've looked around, and everything's made to hold a camera, and I don't really want to drill that out in order to mount my little board. I guess I could try to find a print or something of that nature that might have some sort of a 1/4 inch size screw for camera mounting. But I haven't done that, and this seems to work. Most people seem to find what they need when I do camera reviews this particular way. But I think outside of the coloration, it's very comparable. But again, this is the sort of stuff where I try to just show it, and then you make the decision on whether it's something that you think is of interest to you. Again, if you've missed the beginning spiel, there is a latency that in flight, at least in quads inside the house, I can definitely feel, and makes it difficult to fly. Those that aren't familiar, I've been flying in the house for probably about 3 or 4 years. I'm fairly adept at it, I would say. So when we get to that flight, you'll notice that not only am I flying more conservatively, I'm just not, I can't feel like I'm like I would if I were to have a lower latency camera. Eventually, we're going to make it through the house as well to get the full analog view, and then we are going to jump into the flight, and I'm going to be showing the HD recording of the flight. It took me, I think it was 3 batteries to where even conservatively I could make it through the entire house doing more than just 1 lap. So that's something else to note, was that my first 2 flights, my first flight especially, was chocked full of crashes, pretty much unusable footage. But my third flight, I was able to be much more conservative and be able to fly through the house and actually make some laps. Okay, let's move on to that footage of the flight. All right, we're taking off finally, and gonna fly through the house. Again, this took me some practice in order to be able to adjust, and I'm flying conservatively, and I'm trying to stay in the middle of the walk areas in order to minimize my possible damage. I don't know how to say this without sounding egotistical. If this seems impressive flight to you, maybe watch some of my other indoor brushless whoop flights, and you'll be able to see a relatively dramatic difference between the two. Or if you are familiar with the channel and the stuff that I do here on the channel, just know that I'm feeling the latency and I'm pretty uncomfortable through the course of this flight because of that latency. But you might have different purposes for using this camera. It does do a strange thing with the media. Like every time you record, you get a new media directory and file, and I did end up with some corrupt files. The way they have you recover is, say, if you don't use the button to stop the recording, you can set it to start automatically, which is how it comes out of the box. But if you don't use the button to stop it, if you plug the next battery back in, it goes right into recording. And to recover the previous media, you have to have to have the control board connected, and then you have to go in and play the previous media through the control board, and that's how it recovers that. Not very handy, and I think that's another thing that they need to sort out to be able to compete with other competitors. Is it just needs to recover those recordings on the next battery plug-in, or it needs to not have corrupt recordings, because most of the other cameras in this market, you don't have to worry about corrupt recordings or just not getting your recording anymore. It saves it automatically when you unplug the battery or have anything that goes on. You don't have to take extra steps to recover that. Latency and not losing any of your recordings, those are the 2 primary downfalls that I see with this camera at this time. But if you use the button, as I did, it works fine. Okay, I don't think we need to see the full flight, hopefully, of me flying around the house. We've been through the house upstairs, and we've been through the house downstairs, and we'll head back upstairs to do another couple of laps. So I guess technically it is manageable, but it's going to be more difficult. So if you're not already adept at flying in tight places, it's going to even be more difficult with that additional latency. These are our settings for the camera. Of course, I'm using the control board. I've got everything connected up, and I'm using the control board to manipulate the menu selections and everywhere I go. There are a number of pages to this. I didn't go through everything and test it, of course. Just about everything that you see here is set up automatically out of the box. At least the one that I got, everything was default for the recording. But I do like to show the menus in case there's something of particular note in there for you. It does seem like it has a fairly extensive menu, and it also has something that's different. I think I've only seen this sort of menuing system on the Hawkeye products. I haven't done that many of them, but I have done a few over the years, and I think this menu is something that they've either written or wherever they get their hardware from. This is the firmware menuing system that I do see time and time again. You'll get to a point where you see time and date. That doesn't really matter because I set that and it just didn't stick. It kept going back to 2020 January 1. So if you're looking at your recordings and thinking, oh, well, I'll have dates on my recordings, that'll be really handy. No, you won't. I hate to be so flippant about it, but yeah, that was something that I thought might be handy, was to have time and date on your recordings. But you have to set it every time. So I guess technically you can have a time and date on your recordings, but you'll only get it while it's plugged into the battery. So, not really all that useful for most of us, but it is there. Eventually, we're going to get through the end of the menuing system. Of course, if I've gone too fast, and I did go pretty quickly, because most camera reviews, they don't get that many reviews, and they don't get that many views, and they're oftentimes only viewed for a few minutes. And here's a little sample of the audio. I'm just going to play the audio. And when you see the flight go off screen, then you know that sound is off as well. So I'm going to start that flight with a little bit of audio, but I'm going to reduce the volume heavily so it doesn't hurt your ears. Okay, and that's the end of all the footage that I have. This has gone on probably way longer than I needed to. I'm very curious to know, with everything that I've discussed within this video, is there an installation use that you see and have and want? For me, it isn't usable, especially when it comes to whoop type flying, and they target this for whoops, which is generally close proximity sort of flight. Probably not all that useful, but you might have other instances that you're looking for. And if you would, just enlighten me to why you might be considering this camera for those instances. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.